Hey, this is Brent Frazee. I'm going to be talking to you about bald eagles in Missouri. It's always a fascinating subject to me. A little bit about myself. I was the outdoors editor for the Kansas City Star for 36 years. I retired in 2016. Since then, I didn't want to spend my retirement years in a rocking chair, so I'm still active. I'm still writing and doing programs, and I love working with Mid-Continent Public Libraries. I've had a lot of fun going to the different branches and doing programs like we're doing here today. So if you want to know about bald eagles, hopefully I can help you out a little bit. In the years I was with the Kansas City Star, I was able to see a tremendous amount of progress with bald eagles. When I started in 1980, it was still a pretty big deal to even see a bald eagle. Now they're it's pretty common. They're even nesting in Missouri, but just as important, they come in huge numbers when they're migrating. And it's a great time to, in the wintertime, it's an early winter, it's a great time to see bald eagles. We're going to talk about that here, so stay with us. Okay, the majestic birds of winter. Very true. Best time to view the bald eagle in Missouri is in the wintertime. More than 2,000 birds annually are counted in Missouri. They follow the freeze line from the North Country. In other words, when they're up north, when things start freezing up, they start moving down. And a lot of times they'll be following the migration of the waterfowl. So once the waterfowls start coming down, they're not far behind. They're kind of the cleanup crew. They prey on the weak waterfowl or the dead waterfowl, and that's a major part of their diet. Missouri has one of the highest numbers of wintering bald eagles in the United States, and December and January are the best times to see them. So keep that in mind for this winter. December and January, great time to do some viewing of bald eagles at a time when not a lot is going on. Fishing season is wound down. Hunting season is winding down, but it's a great time to be out in nature and watch wildlife, and great time to spot bald eagles. Why Missouri? Why are we talking about Missouri? Large number of rivers, reservoirs, and marshes that stay open. Remember, we were talking about the freeze line. Well, as these waters freeze up to the north of us, the waterfowl make their hop down south on their migration. And they'll stop when there's open water. And oftentimes, Missouri has that open water. We have a large number of rivers, and we also have big reservoirs, and some marshes stay open. So they follow the goose migration. They concentrate in managed waterfowl areas along major rivers such as Missouri, Mississippi, the Grand, some bigger rivers like that. They feed on stunned bait fish and crippled geese and ducks. And they'll stay as long as their food supply exists. So a lot of times they'll be around even after the waterfowl have the healthy ones have started moving south from their rest stop in Missouri. But the crippled geese and ducks that aren't able to make that flight, that's Mother Nature. I mean, the bald eagles will be there to feed on them. And even if there's open water on bait fish like shad and things like that. So they'll stay around until their food supply is exhausted. then they might move south too. In some cases, they'll stay here in Missouri, and they're perfectly fine as long as they have some open water for the ducks and geese to gather on, and the shad to do fine. They'll stay. So it's a pretty neat deal. It's Mother Nature at work. It's the food chain at work. Why the fascination with bald eagles? Of course, it's our national symbol, of course. We've heard all kinds of stories about how the bald eagle became the national symbol. There's talks, I've even seen articles about how Ben Franklin was in favor of the wild turkey being the national bird, because he said that the bald eagle was just a scavenger and kind of a lazy bird. I'm not sure if those stories are true or not. I've seen some things disputing that, but at any case, Ben Franklin thought the wild turkey was a better choice. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, bald eagle is a majestic bird. I still get excited when I see bald eagles soaring over a lake or over a marsh or something like that. Even though they're more common now, it's still just really fun to see a bald eagle, flying over the lake. They were once in danger of going extinct. Once DDT was banned, the bald eagle was protected, and they made an amazing comeback. They were taken off the federal endangered species list in 2007, and they now nest in many states, including Missouri. So, there's some places where you just wouldn't expect to see bald eagle nests where they're now visible. In fact, the private lake I live on, Riss Lake in Parkville, Missouri, you would never, we had them stop here for winter, on their winter migration. But we've now, this spring, we've been watching them build a nest. And it's a great wild type setting, but it's surrounded by a civilization. There's homes all over the place, but you'd never think that a bald eagle would nest there, but they are, and it's still a fascinating thing to see. Superbird, that's what I call the bald eagle. It has up to 4 times stronger eyesight than human beings. We always talk about the eagle eye. I think that's where the terminology comes from. They can focus on objects from great distances. They can also determine colors much better than we can. So they do have amazing eyesight. And I might mention that that's the reason why you'll see bald eagles up at the top of a tree overlooking a marsh. I mean, you think to yourself, well, they can't possibly see what's going on way over in the distance in the marsh, but they can. They can pick out the weak. They're constantly scanning for the weak. If there's a big flock of geese or a big flock of ducks, they're looking for the one that's acting out of the ordinary, the one that's having trouble lifting off, or the one that's kind of flailing around. That's their meal. That's their next meal. They can pick that out, and with that amazing eyesight that they have, they're going to be able to see that. Speed of flight. Now, this is when they're as they call it, stooping, which means when they're diving straight down on prey. They can go at speeds approaching 100 miles per hour, which is, again, just amazing that a bird can do that. But that's not, now when we say that 100 miles per hour, that's for a very limited time, and it's not straight horizontal flight. This is when they are diving down on prey. But really, we've all seen it, or a lot of us have, where they're flying over a marsh or something like that, and they pick out something down below that they think looks like a double cheeseburger. They're gonna dive down on that prey faster than you would ever imagine. So that's pretty fascinating too. Their size, they have the widest wingspan of any raptor, up to 8 feet. Now just picture that, a bird with a wingspan of 8 feet. The California condor has a longer wingspan, but the condor is not officially recognized as a bird of prey. How high do they fly? They can use thermal winds to reach heights of 10,000 feet. And they're food stealers. We like to think of the bald eagle as this regal bird of prey that will just hunt down its food and everything. And they do that. They will do that. But they, just as often as that, they will pester other birds, such as ospreys, until they drop the food they are carrying. And then the bald eagle swoops in for an easy meal. About the name, the bald eagle. No, they're not actually bald. They picked up that name because of their white cap or their white head. And not all bald eagles have that white cap. That's kind of a badge of honor. That means they've lived for about 4 or 5 years. That's when they get that white head. The juvenile bald eagles still will have their brown heads, and people will often say, well, that's not a bald eagle. Yeah, it is. I mean, or they'll say that's a female bald eagle. No, not necessarily. When they, like I said before, they don't get their white head until they're about 4 or 5 years old. So the juveniles will have a brown head. Nesting eagles. There are more than 500 active bald eagle nests in Missouri. That is huge. The nests are huge too. But what I was saying, the overview, it's just huge that we have that many bald eagles nesting in Missouri. I mean, at one time we were down to the point, even here, where they were on danger of being extinct. And now we've got this many bald eagle nests in Missouri, and it's growing all the time. And like I told you the story about bald eagles in our subdivision, they're very tolerant of human activity now. I mean, used to be you'd think of the bald eagle as a real symbol of the wilderness, and how it had to be out in the middle of nowhere before they would nest. Well, they're nesting now in areas where we never thought they would before. The nests are just huge. They can be up to 6 feet tall and weigh more than a ton. That is huge. I mean, it's like they need an elevator from the bottom floor to get up to the top to hold their eggs. But people say, well, why in the world do they need such a big nest? Well, think about it. These bald eagles, remember we were saying they have the adults have a wingspan of up to 8 feet. Well, you get the male and female in there, and then they lay 1 to 3 eggs and raising their youth. And you're talking about 5 to 6 bald eagles in a nest that can weigh quite a bit. So it takes more than just a little bird nest to hold them. So we're talking about something that they need for they need to be pretty heavy and sturdy to even hold the bald eagles, and also to withstand some of the things like spring storms and things like that. So they know what they're doing. Mother Nature knows what it's doing. They'll often build their nests in tall, sturdy trees near the water. The male and the female take turns minding the nest. They will range out to get food, and it's really something, the food they get. Now, a lot of times it's like bait fish, like shad, or it's the carrion from, from a dead goose or a duck or something like that. But they'll bring back some strange things too if those aren't available. I've seen them bring back snakes. They'll bring a live snake into their nest, and they'll pick it apart to get the meat and everything like that. I've even seen them bring turtles into their nest. So they're adaptable. They know what they're doing, and they know how to get their food. The males and females, they'll mate for life, and then they'll return to the same nesting site every year, which is fascinating too. And if one of the mates passes away, they'll get a new mate, and then they'll start a new tradition and go back to the same nesting site every year. So, researchers have banded these eagles in their nest, and they'll follow their progress for coming back to these places. And it's amazing. Some of these bald eagles have nested in one spot, for decades. So they're a long-lived bird, and they're very loyal to their mates. So it's a pretty neat deal. The eggs will hatch in about 35 days, and then they'll typically hatch out in like late winter or early spring, and they'll hatch out in about 35 days. And then mom and dad train the little ones to feed. They'll feed them their young to start off with, but then they'll feed them. They'll teach them to feed on their own. And eventually they'll just lead them out of the nest, and then they'll learn their own way to hunt for food. There's a lot of people would say there's a male and a female, but it's not. That's a mature on the right, and that's an immature on the left. So kind of sharing the same tree. Best places for winter watching. The large managed waterfowl areas, once the major push of ducks and geese arrived, are the very best place to go. But there are limitations there. And they're great as long as the water stays open. Once we get real cold weather, like in late December or early January, that'll push the ducks and geese out of those areas, and they'll move on. And like I said before, the eagles will stay as long as they have some food left over from the flights. The Missouri and Mississippi rivers are excellent because they do not freeze over. Down in Parkville, where I live, down on the Missouri River in English Landing Park, I have been there on bitterly cold days, and it was a fascinating sight. The eagles would perch on the ice floes going down the Missouri River. They would be looking down into the water for bait fish, for shad or carp or whatever. and they would just take, like, it looked like a Disney ride or something. They would just take a ride down the river for, I don't know, 50 yards or so. Then they would fly back, get on another ice floe and float down. Pretty ingenious way to hunt. They didn't have to expend a lot of energy. They were perched right on that ice floe, and they could just take a little ride down the river. And then I would see them get several bait fish, several shad. They would fly up into a tree and pick their food apart, and then after they were done, either there would be more eagles on those ice floes, or they would take another ride and get more food. So pretty ingenious way to hunt, I think. Even subdivision lakes that attract large concentrations of waterfowl, they're the same way. They'll like I told you earlier about the subdivision I live in. I mean, we've had up to 20 bald eagles on the lake in the wintertime when we get large concentrations of migrating geese. So it's fun. It's a great opportunity for suburban residents to get a look at nature. You wouldn't ever think that in your lake, 15 minutes from downtown Kansas City, that you would see a major rest stop for bald eagles, but it happens. They're opportunistic. December, January, and February are the best times to view them. Again, if the water is open, if it stays open, they're going to be there. The very best place I know to spot bald eagles is Los Bluffs National Wildlife Area, formerly known as Squaw Creek. It's about 100 miles north of Kansas City off I-29. It always attracts large numbers of eagles in the late fall and winter, and they are visible, very accessible. Los Bluffs has a 10-mile wildlife loop driving tour that comes real close to the marshes themselves. All the trees overlooking the marshes have bald eagles, and they also have muskrat mounds out in the water. And a lot of times you'll see the bald eagles perched on those muskrat mounds, just looking around, just looking to see if they can spot something that's an easy pickings. So it's a great place to, if you're starting off and you want to see bald eagles, I would highly recommend that. The admission is free. The wildlife loop itself it's open daily. Great place to go, especially in late fall. I would say from Thanksgiving weekend to all the way through December, as long as the water stays open. So, just a great place to see wildlife. One thing I wanted to add is that, and we'll get into this later, early December is always considered prime time. That's when the Missouri Department of Conservation and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have Eagle Days. And Eagle Days is a special program kind of centered around the time when the bald eagle numbers reach their peak. They'll have indoor programs just to kind of explain the dynamics of bald eagles. And they'll also have outdoor programs where different naturalists will have spotting scopes and binoculars, and they'll help you spot the bald eagles, and they'll help you, kind of focus in on what they're doing in the wild. So great time to to view bald eagles. I highly recommend it. Other sites close to Kansas City. Smithville Lake, great place to spot bald eagles. They also have eagle days going on. Platte Landing and English Landing parks on the Missouri River in Parkville. Great place to go to spot eagles, especially in late December. You can usually see them in the trees overlooking the river. Truman Lake. Truman Lake is a large site, and I can't tell you to hone in on one exact spot because they'll move around. The bald eagles will move around, but in general, any place that you see concentrations of ducks and geese, you're going to see bald eagles in the trees not far away. So that's a good tip for you. Look for the concentrations of ducks and geese, and you'll probably see bald eagles nearby. The Swan Lake National Wildlife Refuge, again, about 115 miles northeast of Kansas City. Another great place to spot bald eagles because they also get large concentrations of ducks and geese, and they're annually they show up there. Four Rivers Conservation Area, that's known as a hunting area, but they have different cells of wetlands, and they get a lot of ducks and some geese. And another great place to view bald eagles. Same thing with Nottoway Valley Conservation Area near St. Joe. Again, managed hunting area by the Missouri Department of Conservation, but they also have viewing possibilities for bald eagles. The thing is, with those hunting areas, I think a lot of times they're closed to bird watchers during the active hunting seasons. But those hunting seasons don't last that long. So you can call up there to those areas before you go and get an idea if they're open, or look on the website and see when the hunting seasons are open, and you can plan your trips accordingly. Other possibilities: Bagnell Dam at Lake of the Ozarks. With all that activity at the Lake of the Ozarks, you wouldn't think that bald eagles would be that numerous up there, but right below Bagnell Dam is a great place for viewing bald eagles. Shepherd of the Hills Fish Hatchery on Table Rock Lake, another just great place to view and very accessible. You can drive there and get out and walk down to the hatchery, and you can see bald eagles circling overhead. Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area near Columbia, another hunting area, but large number of wetlands, and they attract a lot of bald eagles in the wintertime. Lock and Dam 24 on the Mississippi River, Clarksville, Missouri. And also down in the Boot Heel, Mingo National Wildlife Refuge. Great viewing possibilities there also. Kansas. Our Kansas neighbors have great viewing possibilities also. I've been to some of these areas and they're really cool. The Lawrence area, you can get a good look at concentrations of bald eagles below Bowersock Dam on the Kansas River and at Clinton Lake. I remember years ago, you could go up, there was a shopping area, right right on the river, right on the Kansas River. And you could go up to the top floor, and they had a viewing area. You wouldn't even have to get out into the cold. You could, they had a viewing area up there where you could look out the windows, and you could be eye to eye with a bald eagle sitting on a tree perched over the river. It was really cool. Milford Lake, I can't emphasize enough that people say, well, Milford Lake, I don't want to go all the way out there. I mean, that's way out in the middle of Kansas. Well, it's not. It's about a 2-hour drive from Kansas City, and it has spectacular bald eagle viewing possibilities. It's the largest reservoir in the state of Kansas. It often has open water later into Missouri, concentrating migrating waterfowl. And it also attracts large number of eagles. It has a number of different public access areas where you can drive right down into a parking lot of a boat launch area or just a pull-off area, and you can see large numbers of bald eagles back in these coves without hardly having to leave the heat of your car. So it's really it's something to check out if you're wanting to spot bald eagles on a winter weekend. I would highly recommend it. One thing close to Kansas City, Wyandotte County Lake, Kansas City, Kansas. It's one of the oldest lakes in the area, but it still attracts large numbers of geese in the fall and winter. And as a result, the bald eagles will almost always follow them there. Tuttle Creek Lake. This reservoir near Manhattan, it attracts bald eagles during cold winters. The Rocky Ford area and the outlet area almost always has open water, and you can spot eagles in the trees overlooking these areas. So another great possibility. Eagle Days presentations. We briefly mentioned this earlier. These programs were organized more than 40 years ago when the eagles were still rare. They continue today, even though the birds have made a comeback. I remember when I first came into town, it was these programs were just fascinating for people because most people had never seen a bald eagle. And this gave them a chance to learn more about the eagles and everything like that. I was amazed when they started making a comeback. I thought, well, these Eagle Days programs won't be nearly as popular because it's easier to see bald eagles. But if anything, the people who run these programs tell me that if anything, the attendance is up. There's something about the fascination of bald eagles that still just is a big crowd attractor in our state and surrounding states. The programs usually include inside talks and displays, and then a chance to see a live captive bald eagle up close, like in this photo here, and outside viewing of wild eagles at stations manned by staff and volunteers. And people say, well, what's the deal with these live captive eagles? A lot of times there maybe a rehab facility has taken in a bald eagle that was injured or ran into a electrical wire or something like that, or broke its wing, and they're not able to completely rehab it enough so that it can be released back into the wild. But in that case, they They train this bird to not react to human visitors, and they'll take him from spot to spot on programs and give people an idea of what a bald eagle looks like up close. So it's pretty fascinating, I tell you, to see especially their eyesight, see them looking at you like in somewhat of an intimidating stare, but completely safe, and it's a great opportunity to see a bald eagle. These programs give the public a chance to learn more about the national symbol and see why the birds flourish today. Traditional bald eagle days. Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge, it has Eagle Day program in early December, and probably gets the largest attendance of any of the Missouri Eagle Days presentations. It's a tradition. It's usually the first weekend in December. The bird numbers, the ducks and geese numbers are still strong, and the bald eagles have found their way back here through migration by following the waterfowl, and it's fascinating. You can see not only these huge flocks of snow geese and some ducks, but you can also see the bald eagles up in the trees overlooking the marshes. It's fascinating. If you're looking for something to do in early December, call up the website for Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge. They'll give you information on these Eagle Day programs, and well worth your time, believe me. Lake of the Ozarks also hosts a program in early January. And a program is typically held in the Boot Heel to highlight eagles at the Mingo National Wildlife Refuge and Duck Creek Conservation Area. So you have some options there. Other Eagle Day programs: Wyandotte County Lake, if you're looking for someplace close to home. Schlegel Library and Davis Hall, they'll have an Eagle Day program. Again, it differs when they'll have those, usually in mid-January. So again, use your look for the Unified Government website and for KCK and Wyandotte County, and they'll have information about the specific date that they're going to have the program. In Springfield Conservation Nature Center, generally the third week of January, they'll have their program. And at the Runge Conservation Nature Center in Jefferson City, late January, they'll have a program. So you have plenty of options. Just kind of wrapping up what we've been talking about. They're still listed as a conservation concern, a species of conservation concern in Missouri, but they're not an endangered species anymore. And that's a huge deal, because there was a point in time when DDT and some other harmful chemicals in the environment, there was a time when they were worried that bald eagles were close to getting extinct, but not anymore. Their numbers of nesting pairs are steadily increasing, but we still have to take care of them. One big thing, habitat decline due to the lack of wetlands. They need these tall, sturdy trees overlooking the wetlands. And if the wetlands go dry and people move in and they start taking down some of these trees, once the water comes back, they're not going to have the habitat they need to do their hunting. So that's a concern too. lead poisoning due to preying on wounded birds. And by wounded birds, I mean, upland game and that type of thing. In a lot of places now, a lot of states, they've gone to requiring non-lead ammunition for the like steel shot for the ducks and geese, so that the ducks and geese will not get lead poisoning from the pellets that are in the waterfowl marsh. That indirectly helps the bald eagle because they prey on those ducks and geese, and they're not going to get lead poisoning. So that's a good thing from that standpoint. Some people there's still some of the less ethical people in our hunting community and I wouldn't even call them hunters. They're lawbreakers, and they think it's a thrill to shoot a bald eagle. I don't understand that philosophy, because it's not that hard to hit a bird that big, but there are still huge fines for people who will shoot a bald eagle. So they're still very protected. If this is up for debate, we talk about climate change, and there's some debate that climate change could affect the future of bald eagles, that some of these shallow areas that they thrive on will dry up, and they'll lose more habitat. But overall, the future of the bald eagle is very, very encouraging, much more so than when they were an endangered species. And that'll lead to better viewing opportunities in Missouri, Kansas, and surrounding states in the wintertime. So I'm excited about that. I've seen the bald eagles come a long way, and it's exciting to see what the future is going to bring. So, well, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate that. And hopefully you learned something about bald eagles, and pencil in some time in December, late fall, late November, all the way through December and into early January to go out and view these bald eagles. It beats sitting inside watching a TV program or something. You can see nature at work when you go to some of these lakes and marshes that we've talked about. So again, thanks for joining us.